Welcome back, Commanders. My name is Alchris, and today I'll be briefing you on your brand new T-Doll, the energy drink addict, Mechty. Mechty is a support assault rifle wielding always tired T-Doll. She mainly focuses on dealing corrosion damage and supporting other corrosion type dolls. She cycles between an uptime and a downtime mechanic. I will mention that in all my guides I'll be referring to Confectant's index of skill points, since this is much easier to understand. She has a lot of buffs and debuffs to track, but I will explain them as clearly as I can in my usual format. Before briefing her skills, I think it will make much more sense to explain her patch mode and turbo mode. While in patch mode, she reduces the amount of damage she takes by 30% and prevents 2 stability damage. While she is in turbo mode, both her attack and defense will be raised by 30%, and she will gain 2 skill points at the end of each action. Keep these in mind as I go through the rest of her abilities. I'll start with her ultimate, as it's how she swaps between the modes. Dream Wonderland has a 4-turn cooldown. This will trigger her to swap from patch mode to turbo mode for 3 turns, after which she will return back to patch mode. Using her ultimate will also apply Nightmare Shroud to all allies and inflicts Toxic Inundation to the closest enemy for 1 turn. When allies with Nightmare Shroud is about to be attacked, it will reduce the attack of the attacking enemy by 5% before receiving the damage, as well as cleansing 1 debuff from themselves. Not only that, but if enemies are exploiting a phase weakness, it reduces the damage by another 30%. This can only activate once. As for the enemies that was infected by Toxic Inundation, they will receive 25% more damage from any corrosion damage. Mechty has 2 methods of generating skill points. The aforementioned turbo mode, which recovers 2 skill points at the end of each action, and the second method is tied to a basic attack, Bedtime Warm-Up. It has a range of 8 and deals physical damage equal to 80% of her attack and reducing 3 stability. However, if she is in turbo mode, this will change to corrosion damage, and stability is reduced by 5 while gaining 1 extra skill point. So while she is in turbo mode, she'll regain 3 skill points with her basic attack. Next, we'll go over her passive, Mysterious Nap. At the start of the battle, she will start off in patch mode, while giving all allies a corrosion type buff called Nightmare Form. This buff will increase allies' AoE damage by 10%. This will also change any AoE action supports to corrosion damage, while giving it a 50% damage boost. Gee, I wonder who this buff was designed for. Mechty's active skill 1 is Dreamquake, which has a 2-turn cooldown. She attacks an enemy up to 8 tiles away and deals AoE corrosion damage equal to 130% of her attack and reducing 3 stability to all enemies in the selected and adjacent tiles. If she is in turbo mode, she will gain movement up for 1 turn, as well as changing the tiles attacked into Toxic Mist for 2 turns. The movement up will increase her mobility by 2, and Toxic Mist tiles will implant corrosion weakness to any enemy standing in them. If any enemies end their turn in a Toxic Mist tile, they will suffer damage equal to 50% of Mechty's attack, as well as applying stability loss for 2 turns. Any enemies with a stability loss debuff will take an extra point of stability when they're next attacked. Mechty's active skill 2 is Dreamless Night, which costs 3 skill points. She recovers 6 stability and cleanses all debuffs from herself and applies a buff called Dream Guardian to all allies within 8 tiles for 2 turns. Allies with Dream Guardian buff will have their AoE action support damage buffed by another 30%. If she is in turbo mode, she can directly follow up this action with either basic or active skill 1 while gaining 1 stack of Sleep Aid Kit for 2 turns. This buff increases her damage dealt by 10% and can be stacked up to 2 times. When deploying Mechty onto the field, the key element to playing her is being the coherence between Klukai and Peritya. She has an insane amount of buffs and debuffs that support corrosion teams and amplifying corrosion and AoE support actions. She will always have a 1-turn downtime on her turbo mode where she runs out of juice and goes back into patch mode. When it comes to a basic rotation, you want to start off with her ultimate on turn 1 to go into turbo mode. On turn 2, use active skill 2 followed up by her active skill 1. On turn 3, use active skill 2 followed up by her basic. On turn 4, it's another active skill 2 into basic turn. On turn 5, use active skill 1. And then on turn 6, use ultimate. And then just keep repeating this cycle, using active skill 2 and active skill 1 whenever they're available and throwing in basic attack as filler. On to her pros and cons. Mechty's role in a corrosion team is unmatched. The amount of offensive buffs she offers is quite staggering. She is one of the T-Dolls that can manipulate a battlefield, creating toxic tiles and implanting corrosion weakness. And she can change the property of any AoE support action to corrosion. She can be quite good at holding the front line, being able to recover 6 stability basically every turn. As for her cons, she's pretty much locked into the corrosion team. Not that she can't be used in other teams, but quite a lot of her kit is based around the corrosion or AoE support damage. She has downtime. Due to the cooldown between ults, she will drop off every 5th turn. Mechty's best weapon is a signature, Daydream. It grants attack boost, and its trait allows her basic attack to ignore 20% of the target's defense. Its effect is Manifold Dreamscape. After using a basic attack, her corrosion damage is increased by 15%. This weapon also just gives a passive 10% bonus to corrosion damage to the team. If you got the battle pass, you can use the Guerno. It grants attack boost, and its trait will give a random buff if she is at full HP for the turn. Cooperative Warfare increases damage and healing by 5% for each ally within 5 tiles, capping at 3 allies. If there was at least 2 allies in range when she attacks, she can move an additional 2 tiles. Outside of these 2, feel free to use any elite weapon for the stats. If you don't have any free elite weapons, use her namesake, the G11. Its trait gives a random buff if Mechty is at full HP at the end of the action. And its effect, Bizarre Dream Realm, will increase damage against enemies with a corrosion debuff. Otherwise, use the Robertson Modular Rifle. It has the same random buff trait as the Guerno, which will increase skill damage for every 3rd skill point used. Her attachments follow the DPS archetype, focusing first on attack percent, attack, crit rate, and crit damage. Reminder that the only attachment that can have the crit damage is the muzzle. When it comes to which attachment sets to farm, her best one is the Corrosion Boost set. Both her attacks are corrosion damage. You can use the generic Phase Strike set as well, as she can apply corrosion debuffs, and is likely paired with Quick Eye, who also applies a lot of debuffs. When it comes to her fixed keys, the best ones to obtain are 203, Rest Thee Well. If she hits an enemy's phase weakness, they will receive the Toxic Inundation debuff. 403, Quickly So I Can Sleep. When using her active skill 2, she will automatically drop Toxic Mist tiles on a 3-tile AoE around the closest enemy. And 601, Loses Spirit. When using basic attack, she will cleanse 2 buffs from the target before the attack resolves. You can swap the last slot for 401, Horror Movie Night, if you are missing Quick Eye. When using active skill 1, she applies Acid Corrosion to all enemies hit for 2 turns. Acid Corrosion will reduce the target's defense by 30%. Fixed keys 201 and 603 are situational and are not recommended for a core build. Mechty's common key is Gaming Time, which simply increases her basic attack damage by 20%. Other common keys she can steal are Talolo's Afterglow, increasing her damage when she isn't at max skill point, and Papasha's Brilliant Metal, boosting ally support actions by 10% but only once per turn. Otherwise, any common key that increases attack or crit values would work. Next, we'll have a quick look at the Fortifications. At V1, after using an ult, she no longer loses patch mode, thus making all the benefits of patch mode still active. On top of that, Nightmarish Shroud will now reduce the attack of enemies by 10% instead of just 5, while removing 2 debuffs instead of just 1. Turbo mode will also add 30% crit chance to her basic attacks. At V2, new effects will be added to patch mode, increasing the damage of her basic attack by 50% and cleansing 2 debuffs from herself at the start of each turn. At V3, the max amount of stacks of Sleep Aid kit she can have is raised to 3, and when using active skill 2 while in turbo mode, she will gain 2 stacks of it instead of just 1. She will also instantly recover 30% of her max HP, while healing the lowest ally's HP by 15% of her max HP, and recovers 3 stability. At V4, her active skill 1 reduces an extra 2 stability, and while in turbo mode, her active skill 1 will deal extra fixed damage to all enemies hit, equal to 50% of her attack. And after using active skill 1, the damage of her next basic attack will increase by 100%. At V5, turbo mode gets added effects. She now gains 2 extra mobility, reapplies Nightmarish Shroud to allies that have lost it, and generates extra skill points. And at V6, patch mode yet again gets added effects. It now increases corrosion damage dealt by allies by 25%, and Mechty's basic attack crit damage is increased by 80%. The buff Nightmare form that increases AoE action support's damage is increased to 80%, up from 50%, while also reducing an extra stability. And all AoE damage is increased by 20%. To finish off, we'll have a quick look at suitable teammates to fit along Mechty. Her best pairing is Peritya. Without a doubt, Mechty was designed with the purpose of pushing Peritya to the limits. Mechty also acts as an enabler between Peritya and Klukai. These three together are the basis of the Corrosion team. Stick along any sustain and you're all set. Here are some examples of team compositions. They're honestly just different versions of the same thing. And that about wraps up this character briefing for Mechty. I hope this guide helps, and if you have any other suggestions on a build of teammates, make sure to leave a comment below. Until next time, Commanders.